Campfire stories from the Dying Embers universe. Dragons, aliens, and things that go boomp in the night.
Saved time.
Part 4.
The old mechanic of Tori told me about it, Pat said, shifting a little closer to her. He managed the fuel dispersal for the search and rescue. Some kids came out for a backcountry hiking trip and wandered way off their planned track. They didn't check in and their parents got worried. Altori said the teams were searching the entirely wrong side of the park. The kids had actually wandered north and east and were well outside the park boundaries. They've got beaver fever, not bad, but bad enough they couldn't hike out again. Altori says they wouldn't have found them in time if Peters hadn't stumbled upon them. What was he doing? Cadence's voice cut off as she bent over the entry Pat was pointing to. It began on the previous page, so she turned back and began reading aloud. July 15th, 1965. Observation by Backcountry Ranger S. Peters. I was out doing my usual patrol of the northwest section of the park when I spotted the haunt cat. I was just clearing out an old fire ring when I heard a weird, wild sound, like nothing I'd ever heard before. I looked over thinking to see a crow or a raven, but there was this giant cat about 30 yards away just looking at me. Didn't seem terribly impressed by this old gunny. Then he jerked his head over his shoulder. Those shoulders had these big old spikes on them, and his tail was about 3 times as long as his body and was way too swishy to be a cattail. Then he stepped off into the trees. I was right startled, but more so when he showed up again a few minutes later and did that head thing again, like he wanted me to follow him. Well, maybe it wasn't the smartest thing I ever did, following the haunt cat deeper into the wilderness. But I did. He kept appearing every few minutes to show me the way. I must followed him a good 3 miles. Don't know where he was trying to lure me, but about then I smelled smoke from a campfire that wasn't supposed to be there, so I left off following the haunt cat and went to look into that. Cadence scowled down at the end of the passage. And then what? She demanded. That was when he found the kids, Pat said. I suppose he didn't enter that because this record is only about the haunt cat. Cadence scanned the next entry and gave a startled hum. This is my friend Williams, she said. He's been a botanist out here for years. He retired last season. Looks like he spotted the haunt cat in the northeast corner of the park, Pat said, dropping an arm over her shoulders to get a better look at the book in her hands. The haunt cat gets around. Cadence hissed and leaned forward, and Pat yanked his arm back with a startled apology. Cadence shot him an annoyed look and reached up from the book to replace his arm around her shoulders before returning her attention to the entry, ignoring his delighted smile. Williams was the one who found the body of that hiker who died in the snowstorm, Cadence explained, pointing at the date on the entry. And this sighting is from the same date. That is a coincidence, Pat agreed, leaning into her side. Cadence frowned and stood, making sure to grab Pat's hand and drag him with her. She didn't want any misunderstanding about her motives for abandoning the couch. To the table where she sat down with the book in front of her and the still blank sides of her notebook paper also in front of her. Pat took the chair on the corner of the table where he could watch what she was doing as she flipped through the notebook, making first 2 columns of entries. The first was simply tick marks. The second was a list of names under Williams and Peters that included a short note such as chuffed, unknown noise, or eye contact and head jerk, along with a distance for each entry. What pattern are you seeing, Call me Cadence, Cadence snapped before biting her pencil thoughtfully. Cadence, Pat agreed with a grin. There are 2, Cadence said slowly, distinct groupings for the haunt cat sightings. The largest by far is just spotting it at a great distance. The smaller one is where the haunt cat seems to appear, always about 20 or 30 yards from the observer, and deliberately get their attention. 2 of these second groups then found someone who was missing. Once alive, once dead, Pat mused, his face creasing with concentration as he looked at her notes. She felt a sudden odd thrill, for the moment deeply aware of simply how he was a man. I'm no scientist, Pat said slowly, but if one of my machines had thrown out a noise this odd twice, well, I think it was worth looking into. He glanced up at her, and several long moments dragged out before Cadence blushed and realized he was waiting for confirmation.
End of Part 4.
Bard has led his pool of outcast warriors across the stars to this strange blue planet with its cold, nearly dead surface. For years, they clung to each other in the magma caverns, only going to the surface to humor the curiosity of their hosts, until the day a young alien wandered into Bard's song and resonated with him, and gave his pool a hope of something more. Now, a dark threat from Bard's homeworld threatens the fragile connection he has formed with this alien family, and the stars sing of war.
Get your copy of Hidden Fires, available only on Indiegogo this October 2024. Check out the link below the video, like, subscribe, and share.